Welcome. I'm Terry Tropin, and today I'm discussing the steps necessary to select diagnosis and procedure codes from an operative report. First, let me tell you a little about myself. I have a master's in healthcare administration informatics from the University of Maryland Global Campus and have RHIA and CCSP certifications. I'm also an HEMA-approved ICD-10 trainer. I've taught health information technology at Montgomery College in Maryland for over 20 years. And I've also written books on coding. These books are study guides that summarize the coding guidelines. My books include one on E&M coding, ICD-10 CM, ICD-10 PCS, and external clauses. These are available on Amazon. Here's an overview of what's going to be discussed in this video. So we're going to talk about steps to code an operative report, diagnosis coding, external clause coding, and procedure coding. So the first step, very important, is underlining important words. Operative reports typically include a lot of information that will not affect the code or which codes is chosen. By underlining the important words, you pull out the information you need, and you won't have to read the report over and over again to make sure that everything is covered. This is the kind of information you will need: diagnoses, late effects, metastasis, whether they're primary or in situ, anything history of, status post, previous treatment, something is acute or chronic, symptoms. Look at the symptoms and we'll pull those out and we'll later look at, are these related to the diagnosis or are they independent? So that will determine whether or not they are coded. And then we'll look at the procedure. Any words that indicate the type of procedure, the approach, the device, etc. So these are the words you need to pull out of the op report. Your next question is, well, how do I know what to underline? Well, this comes from practice. As you become more familiar with the codes and the guidelines, you'll be more familiar with what information you will need to pull out of that op report for coding. So underline the words needed if possible. If you're taking a test online, then have scratch paper with you to jot down the words as needed. This sounds like a lot of work, but it'll save time in the long run. So here's the operative report we will be coding. This is actually much shorter than the ones typically seen, but in this YouTube environment, it's difficult to code a multi-page report. So let's look at the report. This is a 59-year-old Hispanic female. She comes into the emergency room with her husband with back pain after falling down the stairs at her home while carrying a basket of laundry down to the washing machine in the basement. She tells the physician she had an osteoporosis fracture of the left arm last year. She's also diabetic. The ER physician performs an examination and diagnoses a pathological fracture of thoracic vertebrae due to postmenopausal osteoporosis. She is admitted to the hospital and the physician performed a percutaneous kyphoplasty using PMMA polymethyl methacrylate to reinforce and supplement the vertebra. Okay, so that's what we're going to code. So first, we underline the important words. These are the words to refer to, so that way you don't have to go back and read the over and over again. Now, we don't care that she's 59 years old. We don't care that she's Hispanic. We probably don't care that she's female. We don't care about her, came in with her husband. So what we're going to underline, what's important is she fell down the stairs at her home carrying laundry down to the washing machine in the basement. She had an osteoporosis fracture last year. She's diabetic. Those are the words that are important. It's also important that pathological thoracic vertebrae due to postmenopausal osteoporosis. So that's the diagnosis, the final diagnosis. And then for the procedure, percutaneous kyphoplasty using PMMA to reinforce and supplement the vertebrae. So this is what we have. Diagnoses: history of fracture, diabetes, fracture of thoracic vertebrae due to postmenopausal osteoporosis. Now, the back pain is not coded since it's a symptom of the fracture. Now, the question to ask is this symptom related? Are we surprised that she has back pain after falling down the stairs? No. We would be surprised if she didn't. So therefore, the back pain is not reported separately. And the procedure, percutaneous kyphoplasty. Let's start with the diagnosis for the fracture. What do we know about this fracture? Well, it's thoracic vertebrae caused by postmenopausal osteoporosis. Surgical treatment was provided during this encounter. So that's important for those all-important 7th digits. So are any guidelines related to this fracture? So look at Chapter 13, Guideline B. Any current acute injury should be coded to the appropriate injury code from Chapter 19. On the other hand, this is not an injury. It's not caused just by the fall down the stairs. It's caused by the osteoporosis. So that means you're going to use Chapter 13, Guideline C, pathological fractures. You can write in your book under fracture in your index, fractures pathological due to disease, fractures trauma due to injury. Okay. And another important guideline is Guideline C in Chapter 13. 7th character A is used as long as the patient is receiving active treatment for a pathological fracture. Examples of active treatment are surgical treatment, emergency room encounter. Okay, so that tells us that we're going to use the character A. The 7th character is based on whether the patient is undergoing active treatment and not whether the provider is seeing the patient for the first time. Because sometimes active treatment will take a couple of different visits, but as long as it's active treatment, it's still done with a 7th digit A. Okay, so first of all, let's find the entry in the alphabetic index. In the index, find fracture pathological due to osteoporosis postmenopausal. This refers you to osteoporosis specific type NEC with pathological fractures. So you have to go in the index to osteoporosis, and you can go either osteoporosis postmenopausal with pathological fracture of vertebrae or osteoporosis age-related with current pathological fracture. Both will send you to M80.08. And next to this code in the index is a box with a check mark. This means you're going to need more digits. This is why you have to go to the tabular list. You can't just code for the alphabetic index because you're not going to get all the digits. And as they say, don't have all the digits, the code is invalid, it's wrong. Okay, so now let's go to the tabular list and find M80.08. Next to this code is a box with a check mark and 7th. So we have this in front of the code. This means you need more digits. So where do the extra digit comes in? Where are we going to find that 7th to add? Well, look at the beginning of the category to find the box with the 7th digits. Unfortunately, it's often on a completely different page than your code. So you have to see that box and say, oh, okay, I have to look for that box with the 7th digit. So you see at the top of the box, the appropriate 7th characters to be added to each code from category M80. So all the codes that begin with M80 are going to require the 7th digit. So you have initial encounter for fracture A. So we already said that she's getting surgical treatment, so it's an initial encounter. Now remember, the guidelines state character A is used as long as the patient is receiving active treatment. Now we can go back and there's a X 7th. What does that mean? That means this A has to be in the 7th place. It's like using decimals. So you have to make that A in the 7th place. And in order to make that A in the 7th place, you have to add an X, a placeholder, M80.08XA. So that's the final code for the fracture. So let's look back at M80 and see if there are any notes that apply. Under code, the category M80, it says osteoporosis with current pathological fracture. Okay, so that means we are in the right place. And there are some notes here that don't really apply in this case. You have excludes one note, so if it's one of these, you're not going to use this code, you're going to use a different code. And then you have an excludes two, and this is important. This says personal history of heel osteoporosis fracture. Well, yes, she did have a history, right? This is excludes two. So this lets you know that you can code a current fracture and a history of fracture. This is important. If the patient is having multiple fractures due to her osteoporosis, it's important to note that. There's also a tip. The site codes in this category identify the site of the fracture, not the site of the osteoporosis. Osteoporosis, of course, is systemic, and you have it everywhere throughout the body, but so it's not site-specific. She has osteoporosis in the vertebrae, but also in other places. Okay, so the note said, and our underlined words reminded us that the patient also had a history of osteoporotic fracture. So in the alphabetic index, look up history, personal, and make sure you're in personal, not family. Fracture, osteoporosis, and that gives you Z87.310. Now, again, it looks like great, I have the code, but you have to go to the tabular list to see if there are any notes. Z87.310 in the tabular list, there are a couple of notes under there that kind of reassure you that you're in the right place. And there's also this tip which says use this history code with an M80 if there is a current osteoporosis fracture. So again, that's reassurance that you're on the right track. Okay, now we also had a diagnosis for diabetes. Now, sometimes you do other diagnoses if they impact care, and if they're not impacting the current encounter, then you don't. Diabetes almost always affects treatment, so we are going to list it. It affects the medication and other things that the patient may receive. Now, all of the op report says is she has diabetes. Okay, so it's not documented which type of diabetes. However, if you look at the Chapter 4 Guidelines A2, it says if the type of diabetes mellitus is not documented in the medical record, the default is E11 type 2. So that's where we're going to go. So in the alphabetic index, find diabetes type 2, E11.9. And there's, if you look in the tabular list, you're going to see that this is diabetes not otherwise specified. So again, that reassures you that you're in the right place. And that might be something that you want to underline also. We don't have any information about complications to the diabetes, so we're just going to use E11.9, diabetes without complications. We're going to assume that if there was a complication, it would be mentioned. Okay, so let's look at the codes we've selected so far and make sure that we're on the right track. Fracture, M80.08XA, got it. Diabetes, E11.9. History of fracture, Z87.310. Okay, so we're good. But the next question is, which code is listed first? in the front of your book, after all of these chapter-specific guidelines, is section 2, selection of principal diagnosis. Sometimes people don't even know it's there, but it's really important to know it. So this says the principal diagnosis is defined as that condition established after study to be chiefly responsible for occasioning the admission of the patient to the hospital. This is the same whether it's inpatient or outpatient. So why was this patient admitted? Well, it's not because she had a history of fracture. It's not because she had diabetes. She was admitted because of the fracture, the current fracture. So therefore, M80.08XA is listed first. Okay, so let's move on to the external cause codes. So here again is the statement in the op report. Falling down the stairs at home while carrying a basket of laundry down to the washing machine in the basement. Okay, so what happened? Accidental fall downstairs. Where was she? Single family home. What was she doing? Laundry. Status, leisure activity. Now, I don't know about you, but leisure activity is not what I would think of immediately doing laundry, but it's leisure activity because she's not being paid for it. She's not in the military. It's not implying that doing laundry is fun, because we all know that that's not true. Okay, let's see if there's any guidelines related to external causes. So the guidelines for chapter 20, codes for what happened, whether it's an accident, self-harm, assault, are listed before other external cause codes. List only one activity status and place of occurrence code, and only at the initial encounter. Well, this is the initial encounter, so we're going to have to do these codes if we have the information. If you don't have the information, you don't list them. And the guidelines also say the place of occurrence is listed after other external cause codes. So, falling down the stairs at her home, the stairs were into the basement. So in the external cause index, find fall downstairs, which takes you to W10.9. And again, we get that check mark after the code, and that means you need initial digits. So we're going to go to the alphabetic index. Oh, I did forget to mention one thing. Don't forget that the external cause index is separate from the alphabetic index. So make sure that you're in the right one. I do it all the time. I look in the index. I go, I know it's there. And I go, oh wait, you're in the wrong index. So make sure you're in the right index. Okay, so we go to W10.9 in the tabular list, and this is what we see. So again, we need a 7th digit. So where are we going to find it? The X means you need a placeholder, just like we did last time, and then a 7th digit. So let's go back to under the heading. This is under the whole heading for the whole section, slipping, tripping, and falls, W00, W19. And it's probably going to be on a different page. And the first line says, these apply to all the code categories in this large section. So this again is initial encounter. So therefore, and you also need to add an X placeholder, so you get W10.9XXA. So in this case, you have 2 X's because you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 in order to make that A the 7th digit. So let's look at category W10. There's an excludes note under there that says, due to ice and snow, you don't use W10. So you fall down the steps of your house the first day it's frosty and you don't realize it's icy yet. You don't use this code. But this guideline doesn't apply for this particular case, but it's always good to check. Okay, so now we want to know where did this occur. So look up place of occurrence, where the patient was when she was hurt. She was in her home. So find place of occurrence in the external cause index, house, single family, specified NEC, Y92.018. There's a lot of places for in her single family home, but there's no one for basement stairs. We're going to do the NEC, not elsewhere specified. If she'd been in her home, in the garage or in the kitchen or someplace like that, there would be a more specific code, but there isn't in this specific case. Okay, so what was the patient doing when she was injured? So the heading in the external cause index is activity. So activity laundry, Y93.E2. So the leisure activity, going to look up status of external cause. That's the index heading for that. Leisure activity, Y99.8, and the 0.8 is other. Okay, so let's look at the external cause coding. We have everything covered. What happened? Activity, status, place of occurrence. So yes, everything is covered. So here are the final diagnoses we have. So for that short one-page op report, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 different codes, mostly external cause codes. So everything is covered, and at this point, you might want to look back and make sure that look at the words that you've underlined and make sure that you got it. Okay, so let's move on to the PCS procedure codes. Back to the op report, we see that the procedure was percutaneous kyphoplasty using PMMA to reinforce the supplement the vertebrae. Okay, this is surgery, so we know we'll use a code with the first digit 0 from the medical and surgical section. The body system is musculoskeletal, which of course is broken down into many different systems. So this is upper bones. Root operation is supplement, body part is thoracic vertebrae, approach is percutaneous. Now the op report says supplement, but let's double check and make sure that this is the right root operation. And where you go is you look at Appendix B root operation definitions. This is so important to be familiar with these. You can write notes in here. It's a great place to write notes. So supplement is defined as putting in or on biological or synthetic material that physically reinforces and or augments the function of a portion of a body part. So we can see this says reinforces. Synthetic, we think this is synthetic. I'm going to double check on that too. So let's go to the index in your PCS book and find supplement vertebrae thoracic, which refers you to 0PU4 in the upper bone system, and it gives you the first 4 characters of the code. Indented under this, it says mechanically expandable synthetic substitute and gives you a code in the new technology section, but this is not part of the scenario, so we're not going to do that. So we're going to refer to table 0PU4. We already have the body part value 4 for thoracic vertebrae, so there are only 3 other digits to choose. Referring back to the documentation, the approach is percutaneous, right? Percutaneous. And the qualifier is none. There's no qualifier. So the only question is the device. What exactly is PMMA? What is that? Well, we have a way to find that out. So we have the table 0PU, 4, 3, and Z, and we just want to know about what to use for the device. So what are the possible devices to choose from? We have 7 autologous tissue, J synthetic tissue, K non-autologous tissue. So there's an index, there's an appendix for this too. Appendix G, device key and aggregation table. If you look in that table, you can find PMMA and it says use synthetic substitute. Now we thought that was what it was, but maybe we weren't so sure. So now we know for sure. This confirms that it's synthetic tissue. Okay, so here is the complete code. 0PU43JZ. So 0 medical and surgical, P body system upper bones, U root operation supplement, 4 body part thoracic vertebrae, 3 approach percutaneous, J device synthetic substitute, and Z no qualifier. So piece by piece by piece, and we get it. Looking back at the operative report, and we've underlined the 5 diagnoses are M80.08XA, E11.9, Z87.310, W10.9XXA, Y93.E2, Y99.8, Y92.018. And the procedure is 0PU43JZ. Wow, that's a lot, and it took a while to come to these codes. Remember that the more you code, the faster you will get. You'll be able to complete these steps quickly or maybe even skip some, say, if you know a guideline already. Also, if you underline, highlight, or write in notes as you go, it will make the process easier. So we're looking at fractures and having pathological fractures and traumatic fractures. We wrote in a note about those. Next time you go to fractures, those notes will be there and you'll go, oh, okay, so I need to use this one or this one. It will help you. So as you go along, as you learn coding, write in the book. It's so important. So in the index for ICD, for CM coding, circle the difference between fractures pathological and fractures traumatic. In the tabular list, circle note under Z47 orthopedic care, excludes 1 after care. That's important. Circle a note under code category M80, excludes 2, personal history of osteoporosis fracture. That is often the case. And then there's a tip under Z87.310, assigned for history of osteoporosis fractures that have resolved, even when a code from category M80 indicating current osteoporosis fracture is also reported, okay? And then circle diabetes NOS under category E11. So that tells you if the diabetes type is not documented, you use this code. So in your PCS book, tab the appendices. They have really important information, and kind of look at these and say, to become familiar with them. So you say, gee, I'm not sure about this. Oh, I can go to the appendix. Particularly these two, this one, and this one, I think. They're all important, but I think these are the most important. So look at these, become familiar with them, put tabs on them so you can find them easily. They can make things a lot easier for you. So that's the end of the video. Be sure to look for other videos in this on this channel. So if you want to contact me with comments or questions, you can do it through Facebook. You can do it through email. And also here, these books available on Amazon. I just uploaded revised 2022 books for PCS and CM coding. The evaluation and management book obviously will be later this year. Thank you very much for listening. I hope this has been helpful. Thank you.